Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Tartaglia,
Hi, I'm Dr. Bone.
and today we're going to talk about unexpected bad news.
What we want to know, what we'd like to ask from you is if a physician has bad news to deliver to you, how would you want to be told? How would you want to hear that news? So many years ago, I watched a couple of video clips in a training session, and they were pretty heart-wrenching to watch. The first one, the lady was crying, sobbing, and the story she told through her sobs was that she was given bad news on the telephone, that the physician called her and let her know that they had her biopsy results back and they were returned, and that she had breast cancer. And the physician had tried to give her further information about what the next steps were, but she was so upset and so distraught receiving the information over the phone. She said, I could not hear anymore. I couldn't listen to anymore. I couldn't accept any more information. And she was just, like I said, distraught that the information had been given to her in a phone call. So then the video clip changed to another lady who was being interviewed, and she also was sobbing and similarly distraught because her physician called her and would not release her information over the phone. She said, I was sure that my biopsy results were back. I'm sure that's, the bad news that they had to call to give me, but he wouldn't tell me on the phone. He said I had to come into the office to get the information. And so she also was distraught and very, very upset and sobbing because she didn't like the way her information had been delivered because they were going to make her come into the office. Basically, it told us in the teaching session that some patients have a particular way they want to receive the bad news and other patients don't feel the same way. And I just don't know, is there a right way to give bad news?
Yeah, and that's always tough. As a hospice and palliative medicine physician, I tend to take a read of the room before I deliver any news. Obviously, before we even go in to see the patient, we review records that we have and try to get understanding from other staff members that have referred the patient to us. And then I try to have a read of the room. And then I've discussed this in other videos. I always show up present. I leave all my baggage at the door because sometimes if you show up and you're having a bad day, that's going to project to the patient and the family. They're about to hear really terrible news. So the whole reason what sparked us to wanting to do this video was, what do you all think, our viewers? Like, how would you want to hear bad news? I mean, years ago, we were told, you can just deliver bad news by yourself. Then we learned in our training, no, there should always be a family present at that interview, at that meeting. Years ago, doctors just stood up. As a hospice and palliative medicine, we're always taught to sit down and speak at eye level.
Yeah.
Some physicians I work with, they take their watches off to kind of show that they're, free. Back in the beeper day, put your beeper out. Like you're not going to answer.
So you're not disrupted.
Mm-hmm. But we're just curious of what you, as our viewers, want to hear and how you want to have the news delivered.
Is there a better way? Now, for primary care, which I walked in primary care for many years of my career, you have a good relationship with those patients. And so sometimes the specialist is the one who did the test and has those test results, and they're the ones who are going to deliver the bad news. But sometimes the bad news actually came from primary care. And for me, patients already had their follow-up visit, and so rarely did I ever have the need to tell somebody on the telephone. But I'm sure in the last few years, because of the pandemic that we have been through, those types of things did change. And I don't know if there was a better way. I know that to just bring the topic up, patients were eager to hear. They would often bring a family member, and I would tell them, please bring a family member. I think 4 ears listening is always better than 2. And if you're delivering information about a malignancy, once the C word, once cancer comes up, patients and families can typically become panic-stricken, and they tend to shut down. But we try to brace the patient and the family, try to give them that warning blast across the bow, so to speak, and try to tell them, I'm afraid we've reached that point, like maybe it's chronic illness, and they've had decline, they've had multiple admissions, maybe it's a new diagnosis of a malignancy, and they're not at that point, but maybe it's far advanced when it's discovered. There are some malignancies
Yes.
that by the time they're found, they can be pretty far advanced.
Yeah.
I know Dr. T got a phone call just this morning from a colleague that's concerned about a patient because they have a mass and they don't want to do any investigation because they've been through so much already.
Yeah, and if it looks like cancer and it acts like cancer and it is behaving like cancer, then as a physician, we can assume that's cancer. But again, to deliver that news to the patient, you have to have some empathy and some understanding of the background. Actually, almost a year ago, it's been over a year ago, I received a phone call. I was, shopping at the Dollar Tree. It was after my day of work, buying stuff for my daughter's birthday because we like to decorate her door. We learned that from Disney cruising. So we decorate her door for her birthday. And I was there with my son Ryan, and he noticed that one of my friends called, and it was someone that always called me every day. And I said, "Oh, it's okay, let it go to voicemail because we have to check out." Well, then it was another call, and then it dawned on me, oh, wait, I had sent her to the emergency room, and so maybe now she was getting. So I answer the call, and this doctor says, "Hi, Dr. Tartaglia, I'm here with, this patient, and she wanted me to call you." And I was like, okay. And mind you, now I'm on speakerphone. I'm in my car loading bags. And as physicians' children, they have awareness. So my 9-year-old has a lot of awareness of serious illness. So the doctor just blurted out, yeah, the hip pain that your friend's experiencing, I did x-ray, it lit up. There's a lot of lytic lesions. Her lung is full of tumor mass. And as he was saying all this, I was like, whoa, like she's by herself in the ER and you're throwing this bombshell on me. I had to sit down and take it back because it was not a patient. Like it wasn't a doctor to doctor call. It was more of a doctor calling, I'm her friend. So it was very difficult. And I remember I called Dr. Bone right away because I had a hard time processing all that information. Before I hung up, I thanked him for being honest. I mean, it was great that he actually explained it because there's two ways of looking at it. Some of those ER doctors may have just admitted that patient. She was going to be admitted because she had intractable pain. And it may have gone on for days before she would have found out because they were going to wait and do a biopsy or do more testing, do a PET scan, do all these things, So in a way, it was great that he shared it. But in another way, it was just like, whoa, it was overload. And what became so overwhelming to me was that my 9-year-old said, oh my God, she has cancer. It's in her bones. She's going to die. She needs hospice. And that is what took my breath away. So I think it's very important as physicians that we try to understand our patients, even if we are just meeting them for a very brief time, and ask them, how would you like us to discuss this difficult situation?
And I like what you say about reading the room.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we do go into a patient room with someone, I introduce myself, and depending on the feeling in the room, I'll, let them know I am with the palliative hospice team, mm-hmm. and, see what kind of response that I get from that. And then I like to give them just a little bit of summary that your specialist, your primary team, the hospitalist, they have asked me to come in and provide a consult. And I want to talk with you about what's happening, what you understand, so I can kind of get a little bit of an idea of what they already know. Many times in my career, I've been told the phrase, no one ever explained that to me. And so having the ER physician, I know he laid a heavy load on you. I don't know how he delivered all that information to your friend, but physician to physician, some of the niceties and some of the, gentleness, I think you didn't get. I think he just went right to it and just, gave you the nuts and bolts, knowing that you were a physician and a friend of this person. Right. And he didn't really give you that kindness of a slow, gentle delivery. He just laid it out for you. Right. And we don't like to do that with patients.
No, we like to feel them out and try to understand. And I think you brought up a really great point. I always do the same thing. I ask the patients and families to summarize what they know. And it's very sad when they address us like, wow, no one ever took the time to explain all this to at the end, after we're done explaining their disease process, why we've reached the point that we have to do a palliative consult, what palliative medicine means. It is heartwarming when patients want to continue to follow with me. Of course, that makes you feel good inside that you've created a bond very quickly. But it's also heartbreaking on the opposite side that it took
all of this to get that information.
Yeah.
So the wish statement is something that a lot of physicians will use when they are delivering that type of bad news. I wish I had better news.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had a better treatment. I know the oncologists and the heart physicians and lung doctors use that statement.
Yeah, I wish I had more information to give you is another one that, it's open ending of I wish. And I feel like the biggest thing is I wish I had a cure.
Yeah, we do wish we had a cure. That's why we went into this field. It's such a noble calling, and it is such an honor to be able to care for our fellow humans. I just feel very powerful and very strong that that is just such an important thing for me, to be able to care for my fellow man, and to not be able to offer a cure does not mean that I cannot offer care. And I think sometimes inadvertently, without thinking or without realizing the impact, sometimes people hear a horrible statement.
Right. And they feel that cure and care are synonymous, and they're not.
And they might mistakenly even say there's nothing more that can be done.
Yeah.
And that statement just makes me cringe.
Or it's quitting. Dad, a lot of times you hear that from the family, right? You're in the room and this father or mother's in the hospital bed with this non-rebreather mask on. They can hardly talk. It's very loud. You see their abdominal muscles working because they still can't breathe, even with all these accessories that physicians add to their treatment. And the daughter will just give a zinger. And I say daughter, but it could be a son. It could be anyone. It
could be a neighbor.
Spouse,
it could be a friend.
You're quitting.
Yeah, you're a fighter. You can fight this. And that puts a burden on the patient because sometimes they're tired, emotionally tired, physically tired, and they don't want others to think of them as being a quitter.
Yeah.
And so I prefer, they are a warrior, they're a champion, and they have had a good fight, but everybody deserves to be able to elect a different outcome. And It's a brave thing. It's a hard thing to be able to choose a different outcome rather than just to continue to fight.
Yeah. And instead of viewing it as giving up, you should look at it as an extension of other care to help you die more peacefully. Because dying peacefully is very important. And when you speak to the patient, like, hey, this is not giving up. You speak to the loved ones or whatever. This is just another avenue of care that we're going to have you live your best life as long as you can for the time left on this earth.
We are mortal. And so it is a reality that we're going to pass. And we do have the ability and the right to be able to choose what that's going to look like. So I always ask the family to please support their decision, encourage them and tell them you're not going to abandon them, that you're proud of them, and that you're going to stand by them. But the healthcare team wants to continue to care for them. Even if cure is not possible, care is definitely available.
And care is available to your last breath. I mean, it's so important to have that care and that specialty care that can be given to you. Sometimes when you're in that fight or flight mode that you want to survive and you want to cure, the other physicians and nurses that are caring for you cannot be honest with you. So there's a lot of resistance that is felt in the room. A lot of, you feel this heavy weight when you walk into the room because there's like this elephant in the room you cannot address.
Right. And so being able to accept that information and for us as physicians to know how people want to hear bad news is really important. And that's why we wanted to get some feedback. Is there a better way to deliver that bad news? And sometimes it's the bad news of just the diagnosis. Sometimes it's the bad news of the progression. Sometimes it's bad news that the medication is no longer treating it. So it's not that the person failed, it's because the medication failed. And those things all happen. That's part of the reality of it. And we want to be able to provide that care in a sensitive manner, provide the information to the patient so that they feel fully supported and heard and listened to.
Yeah, and I think what Dr. Bone just said is really important to break it down is, there are, right now in modern medicine, we have a lot of things to help patients live longer that they didn't have in the 1980s or even in the 90s. Like our medicine evolves. However, there comes a point where if patients are suffering or having symptoms that prevent them from living their best life, that's when we have to look at, okay, like what other options are out there to help them live their best life.
Let us know in the comments below what your thoughts are about ways that could be sensitive to tell bad news, how we could get a better read from the families and from the patients. What would be a good way for us to be able to provide that information that's necessary for you to be able to make the choices that you need to be able to make. The team will certainly guide you and certainly wants to offer everything, because cure for everyone is our goal. We want to be able to care for everyone in a sensitive manner, but sometimes cure realistically is not possible.
Yeah, and care is always possible, and I think it is very important for patients and families to not be upset when you hear, I wish I had a cure, and try to understand the information and the symptom management that will follow.
Specialists in particular, I think, really struggle with delivering bad news because they're used to fixing everything. They're used to curing things. They're used to being able to have, a magic wand almost, and they can provide a medication that makes the patient feel better, or they can provide a surgery that removes a problem, and they can cure a lot of things. But then sometimes that cure is not possible, but they still want to care for the individual, and they really struggle to give that bad news because they don't want to fail you. They want to provide that care and that help to the patient, to the family.
And I feel that, medicine is more than just disease management and physicians reading books and being experts on disease. We're people. And just like our patients, we're mortal. And sometimes we make mistakes in the delivery of the news. As experts in hospice and palliative medicine, we try to make less mistakes, but sometimes we learn from those mistakes from patients. So that's why we really wanted to do this vlog on the unexpected bad news, and we would love to have your feedback.
Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate your comments and all the subscribers that we've got. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Forwarding our videos to other people.
And have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.